5 simple ways to instantly make peace with a troubled mind. Hi there, my name's Richard Patterson, and welcome to this masterclass 5 ways to instantly make peace with a troubled mind. You know, when we're being troubled by the mind, whether we're having anxious thoughts, worry thoughts, self doubt thoughts, fear thoughts, etc., the natural reaction is to struggle against the mind, to fight it, to resist, to want to push the thoughts away. Naturally we want to have a quiet mind and we want to have pleasant thoughts. The thing is, you've maybe heard the expression, what you resist persists. And the more we struggle against the mind, the more power we give the mind, and the bigger the mind seems, the more it disturbs our peace. And so what I'm hoping to share with you in this masterclass, or what I am sharing with you, I should say, is a different way to relate to the mind, a way that will help you be more present, take back control of your thoughts, eliminate 95% of the unwanted chatter in your head, and break free from the trap of unconscious thinking. So how to do that? Well, there's a quote from Abraham Lincoln that I like to use. And, upon coming across an unpleasant man, he once said, "I don't like that man. I must get to know him better." Recognizing that the more we fight and resist and kick and scream against the mind, the bigger a problem we create with the mind. The key to experiencing more peace is to get to know the mind better. So I'm hoping that after this masterclass, you'll understand the mind a little better and come to see why the mind doesn't have nearly as much power over you as you may have thought, and that you're actually the one in charge. So I'm going to, before I get into the teaching portion of the masterclass, I want to do a short meditation. It'll only take 5 minutes or so, and it's called the noticing exercise. I'm going to start with this for 2 reasons. One reason is just to bring our attention to the moment. And the second one is I'm going to, as I go then through the material of the masterclass, I'm going to refer back to this exercise. So before we begin, I'd like to invite you to think of something that's troubling you right now. Something current in your life that occupies center stage in your mind. Notice how it feels in your mind and in your body. Maybe there's a feeling of heaviness, a feeling of contraction that comes with this thing that's troubling you. So now I'm going to ask you to gently close your eyes and notice a few things. So begin by noticing the sensation of your body coming into contact with the chair. Noticing the different points of the body touching the chair. Notice the feeling of your feet touching the floor. Notice the different parts of the feet, the toes, the skin surrounding the feet, and maybe if you're really attentive you can even get a sense of the life force, the life energy inside your feet. As a pulsing or a tingling. And if not, that's fine as well. Bring your attention to your hands. Can you feel a sense of tingling in your fingertips? Or perhaps feeling of warmth in the palms of the hands. Notice the sensation of the air in the room coming into contact with the skin on the backs of your hands or on your face. Bringing your attention to the breath as it flows in and out of the body. Noticing where in the body you can feel the movement of the breath. Perhaps as a cool breeze passing through the nostril, or an expanding and contracting of the rib cage. Just taking a moment to notice the breath moving in, moving out. And as you do this, the mind may well wander off into thinking, and that's absolutely fine. Just whenever you notice, come back, noticing any sounds around you. Now zooming out and becoming aware of the entire body. Noticing how it is to be in this body. Sitting in the chair, breathing in, breathing out. Noticing that now is happening. And now I invite you to gently open your eyes again. So how did you get on? Was it difficult to put your attention on the present moment? And what happened to the problem that you were focusing on at the start? Did it keep coming up while you were going through the exercise? Or perhaps it even slipped your mind? Maybe as the present moment occupied center stage, the problem was pushed off stage temporarily. And here's the key question. Did you need to fix anything in order to experience peace in the moment? So before I jump into the teaching, why would you want to listen to me anyway? This old fool. Well, I've spent the last 4 decades on a journey of spiritual exploration and self-discovery. And I lived as a monk also for 7 years. I spent 25 years, or I still do teach meditation. So I've been doing that for about 25 years now. And I spent years sitting with different masters, mostly in India. I've had this fascination with India since I was 20 years old, which is the first time I went. And so I spent years sitting cross-legged on dirt floors at the feet of Indian masters, which wouldn't necessarily mean I have anything in particular to say, but anyway. I've also written 3 books, and I'm a qualified teacher with the UK Mindfulness Association. But the main reason I do what I do is I see so many people suffering unnecessarily. I said in the introduction, how to eliminate 95% of the unwanted chatter in your head. And that might sound like a pipe dream, but it's really true that when you get to know the mind better and you get to understand your part in the suffering, it's really not that difficult to let go of a lot of the mind-created suffering. Yeah. So I know I can help people. And I see so many people looking for solutions in the wrong places. It's like losing your keys in the house and looking for them in the garden. I know I spent years looking in all the wrong places for inner peace. And so hopefully I can, save you some time on the journey. And apart from anything else, it's also my passion and my purpose to share what I've learned, to help you find a more peaceful, more vibrant, more alive, more present life. And there's one particular insight I want to share in this masterclass. You could call it a master insight that changed everything for me in an instant. The mind itself didn't change, but there was something I saw about my relationship with the mind which just made a huge difference immediately. So learning this completely different way of relating to the mind can cut years off your search for peace and fulfillment. So let's jump into the teaching. So I want to begin just by outlining the issue, the human condition, which is to be continually lost in thinking. Lost in thinking, the human condition. So I have a good friend called Sandy Newbegin. He's also a former monk and author. And he wrote a book called Funk. And in his book, he said, if you don't know how to switch your mind off at will, you're not thinking, you're being thunk. And most people spend their days being thunk. You know, you're sitting eating your cornflakes at breakfast time. Your mind is on the to-do list for the day, or you're maybe running a conversation you had with your partner the day before, wishing you hadn't said some particular thing. And at some point you look down and you see this empty bowl lying in front of you. And you have no recollection of having eaten the contents. You know, and maybe the whole time there was a beautiful songbird singing outside the window. But you were completely unaware. You were lost in your mind, lost in thinking. And this is what we do, you know, from the moment we wake up in the morning till the time we go to bed at night. We spend it running these mind movies in our head. And there are two main consequences to this being lost in unconscious thinking. The first is that, you know, obviously when the content is negative, when you experience a lot of patterns such as anxiety, worry, self-doubt, fear, and you don't know how to switch it off, it creates suffering. It's very overwhelming, very challenging. But there's a second consequence. Because we're constantly living in our heads, we miss out on the fullness of life in the present moment. Life is only ever happening now. This unconscious thinking habit that most of us have, you know, when we're being thunk, we're very rarely aware of the moment. You know, unless they're just, maybe for a moment there happens to be a gorgeous sunset or, you know, something really beautiful or spectacular catches our attention, and we maybe temporarily become present for a few moments. But before long, you know, we're off into our past and future thinking again. And as a result, we miss out on the miracle of life now. There's another teacher, Robert Holden, he said that, you know, life is happening now, but we live our life in the not here and the not now, and we miss it. So these are the two main consequences of being lost in unconscious thinking. So what do people do to deal with this, this constant stream of thoughts that's flowing through the head? So there are 4 common strategies that people use to deal with an overactive mind. You know, the first one is suppression. Food, alcohol, drugs, etc., etc. Then there's distraction, you know, being constantly lost in your mobile phone. The average person in Britain watches 5 hours of TV per day. Or, you know, you could be distracted by video games, gambling, shopping, addiction to shopping. You know, anything to get the mind off the mind for a moment. And then there's busyness. You know, a lot of people just can't sit still for a moment. They're just constantly thinking of what next, what can I do now? And then there's self-improvement. And this is very logical and very obvious solution to, if you're experiencing a lot of anxiety, fear, worry, self-doubt, it would seem clear that the simple solution would be to fix the mind. And this is a path that I was on for 20 years. And when I finally found the solution I'm going to share with you in this masterclass, I saw clearly why that approach, that there are a lot of disadvantages. The main one being time. We're looking for peace in the future. We're looking for peace when the anxiety's been healed. We're looking for peace when we're not fearsome anymore, if that's a word, fearful. And, one of the things is when we have these painful patterns, we tend to think there's something wrong. And we think the mind is broken. And if you think something's broken, the obvious solution is to try and fix it. So for a long time, I thought there was something wrong with my mind. I believed that my anxious thoughts shouldn't be there. I believed that it was wrong to feel confused, or to feel sad, or to feel down. I felt that I couldn't be happy until I had resolved these patterns and that I was free of them. Basically, I was trying to create a different version of myself. I believed that the self, who I am today, is not capable of feeling peace, apart from some brief moments of peace, perhaps. So I spent years working on myself, trying to find peace of mind through upgrading all my turbulent thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and trying to turn them into peaceful ones. And, most people who come to me for coaching have been on this journey for a long time, this journey of trying to fix the content of the mind. And I want to be very clear here, I'm not knocking this in the slightest. This is an incredibly valuable approach for a lot of people. What I'm suggesting, for those who are ready, that there may be another way that may be quicker, may be simpler, may be more effective. Trying to fix the mind, I call it trying to iron the ocean. And here's why. Here's the main problem with trying to create a peaceful mind. And it's a quote from the Indian spiritual teacher Nisargadatta. And he said, there's no such thing as peace of mind. Mind means disturbance. Restlessness itself is mind. So the nature of the mind is to be restless, to be agitated. And here's some other reasons why this isn't an effective approach. For one, you have no control over the thoughts that appear in your head. You can only do something about your thoughts after they have already happened. I'm going to talk more about this later. Another reason, it's a perfectly natural part of the human condition to experience dark clouds. Like the weather outside, you get all kinds of clouds passing across the sky. You get white ones, you get black ones, you get big ones, you get small ones. And it's just simply part of the human condition that in this parade of thoughts that come across our awareness, some of them are pleasant, some of them are challenging, but none of them are wrong. It's the mind that makes them, that slaps a label of wrong bad, undesirable onto them and create suffering. And another reason why this, trying to fix or change the mind is not an effective approach is because it takes time. And now is the only time you can experience peace. Not in the future. The day my life changed. So I tried this approach for years and years, trying to fix the mind. And one day on a 6-month meditation retreat, I had an experience, I guess it was an awakening of sorts, where one day, I was 2 months into this retreat, and I went outside one day, and it was like the whole world had changed. And I was feeling this amazing feeling of joy and peace. And it went on for 2 months, whether I meditated or not. And here's the thing, is that my mind had not changed in the slightest. All the anxious thoughts, the unworthy thoughts, the desperate thoughts that had brought me to the retreat in the first place were still there. The personality was still the same. Nothing had changed. All the unresolved issues, the guilt, the fear, the self-doubt, all still there. So on the surface, I was still a complete mess, just like before. And yet, I was filled with this deep, deep peace, like an ocean of peace. And here's the key point. It was a peace that had nothing to do with the mind. And I'll talk about this later as well. There's 2 types of peace. There's peace of mind, which is like passing clouds, peace that comes and goes. And there's the peace which is the backdrop of your experience, which is unchanging. So through this experience, I discovered 3 things. 1, you don't have to change a thing about the mind to experience the peace you're looking for. 2, you'll never find ongoing peace in the mind because the mind is restless by nature. Sure, there will be moments of peace, interspersed with moments of restlessness and agitation. But what I'm talking about here is ongoing peace, lasting peace. 3, there's a deep, unchanging peace inside you that has absolutely nothing to do with what's going on in the mind. It's your true nature. So let's jump now into the 5 ways to instantly make peace with a troubled mind. And I've consciously chosen this picture of a light bulb because in my experience it's these aha light bulb moments that can bring about great change in our lives. So strategy number 1, understanding the difference between peace of mind and peace with mind. And here's a quote you might want to write down. You don't suffer because the mind is restless, anxious, sad, or confused. You suffer because you believe it shouldn't be. So I want you to read that again and really take that one in. You don't suffer because the mind is restless, anxious, sad, confused. You suffer because you believe it shouldn't be. You believe there's something wrong. What if, rather than spending years trying to iron the ocean, trying to change your thoughts, fix the mind, to find a few fleeting moments of peace. What if you were to focus instead on making peace with the fact that the mind is restless, messed up, all over the place, confused, lost? Making peace with your lack of peace. So what if you fully expected the mind to be restless, confused, grumpy, impatient, whatever your own particular flavor is? It's called the human condition. And of course, we have beautiful thoughts too. We have caring, loving, compassionate thoughts as well. What if you didn't see any of the passing thoughts in your mind as bad or wrong? If you saw them as neutral events passing through your mind. What if you didn't feel the need to heal, fix, or change any of it in order to be at peace? Or you weren't waiting for things to improve before you can start enjoying your life again? This is a common one with people who come to me for coaching. They're waiting for things to improve before they can really start living. And I show them that they can actually experience peace right now, even with these patterns still there. It's more a question of where your attention is. And what if you were able to be completely at peace with the mind, just as it is? So in truth, we don't suffer because we have negative thoughts or emotions. We suffer because we believe there's something wrong. We believe that they shouldn't be there. We believe that there's something wrong with us for having them. So we think that the content of the mind is a reflection of who we are. We believe that they need to be gone in order for us to experience peace. And the other reason we suffer is because we're compulsively preoccupied with the content of the mind. We give it so much of our attention. In fact, we base our whole lives on the content of the mind. And in doing so, we miss out on life. We miss out on the beauty and splendor of the present moment. So here's a quote from my book, Kick the Thinking Habit. Don't be concerned about the thoughts that come and go. Leave them alone, and they will leave you alone. Leave the mind in peace to do its dance, and it will leave you in peace to do yours. Don't touch it at all, and you will remain untouched by it. So let's move on to the second strategy now for making instant peace with a troubled mind. And this one is recognizing the difference between thoughts and thinking. So ready for another game changer? Or this was a huge game changer for me. Recognizing that thoughts are self-arising, they appear by themselves and are not in our control, and realizing that thinking is a choice. you can choose to stop thinking in any moment if you become aware. Through, for example, as we saw in the noticing exercise, putting your awareness instead on your breath or on your feet. Thoughts are self-arising. I have a few exercises I do to demonstrate this. But if you were just to close your eyes for a moment, and like a cat watching a mouse hole, with intensity, watch to see what the next thought will be. And what you'll discover is you have no idea what the next thought is going to be. Thoughts are self-arising. They appear by themselves. So when you're being thunk, that is, when the mind is the one in charge, particularly when the content is negative, it can feel like thinking is something that's happening to you. Like you're an innocent victim being subjected to a tsunami of thoughts against your will, and that you have no choice but to listen. This was my experience for years. I remember just being, having this continuous tsunami of thoughts going through my head and feeling like I had to listen. I mean, what other choice did I have? But it's not true. When we did the noticing exercise, was it possible to choose to put your attention on your breath or on your feet, rather than following the storylines in your head? So it's not true that thinking is something that happens to you. What's really going on is that in most people, thinking is running on autopilot. It's unconscious. And when we become aware, in other words, we notice that thinking is going on, we're able to intervene. We're able to choose whether to continue thinking or not. So although thoughts are self-arising, you are the one who's in charge of where you put your attention. Whether you choose to follow thoughts and make stories out of them or not. So your attention is your secret weapon. It's your kryptonite against the mind. Just as kryptonite rendered Superman helpless, your attention makes the mind powerless. The mind has no power over you if you don't participate. And we'll talk about that more later. Without your participation, the mind has no power to affect your peace. You're the one in control. Strategy 3. You suffer because you are open for business. This is an expression I love from a teacher I spent a lot of time with in India. This was one of his one of the expressions he often used. What does he mean by you're open for business? You're compulsively preoccupied with the self-arising thoughts that appear in your head. You marinate in them, you stew in them, you chew on them, you get lost in them all day long. You react unconsciously to the ones you don't like, resisting them, rejecting them, fighting them, trying to push them away. you believe they shouldn't be there and that there's something wrong with you for having them. So in other words, you're open for business. You're open to engaging with the thoughts. So I want to do another very short meditation now. Called Leave the Mind in Peace. And this meditation will demonstrate another way to deal with the self-arising thoughts that appear in your head. So again, it will be around about 5 minutes, possibly 6 minutes. So I invite you now to find a comfortable position. And to begin again, just by becoming aware of the sensation of your body in the chair. The feeling of your feet touching the floor. Consciously bringing your attention to this moment. Noticing the sounds in the room. Noticing this simple sense of being that's here. And in this short exercise, we're going to regulate the breath. So the idea is for the in-breath and the out-breath to be roughly equal in length. And to do this, it can be useful to use counting. So breathing in for a count of 3 or 4. Breathing out for a count of 3 or 4. Breathing in, 3 or 4. Breathing out for 3 or 4. This is all you have to do right now. Focus on the breathing and the counting. Now, as you do this, the mind will continue to be active. The mind never stops. The mind is constantly throwing up self-arising thoughts. And that's fine. Simply notice thoughts appearing. And bring your attention back to the breathing and the counting. Counting to 3 or 4 on the in-breath and the out-breath. Whenever thoughts appear, just observe how they appear by themselves and how you can choose to engage with them as you may normally do, or you can choose to bring your attention back to the breathing and the counting. So you're not trying to do anything at all with these thoughts that arise. You're not trying to stop thoughts. You're not trying to clear the mind. You're simply, your job is breathing and counting. Let the mind do whatever it does. Let thoughts come, let them go again. Using the breathing and the counting as an anchor to keep your attention fixed on the here and now. There may be many thoughts, there may be few thoughts. It's not important. There may be pleasant thoughts, there may be unpleasant thoughts. Again, it's not important. Your business is the breathing and the counting. What the mind does is none of your business. You're not even trying to meditate. You're not trying to find any particular space or feeling. Peace may arise as a byproduct, but that's not the focus. The focus is, as best as you can, to stay with the breathing and the counting. And now, let go of the counting. Just allow your breath to fall into a natural rhythm. And gently open your eyes again. So how was it to leave the mind in peace? Was it difficult? Was it quite easy? So I'm going to move into the next strategy now, the next of our 5 ways to instantly make peace with a troubled mind. This one's called Don't Fire the Second Arrow. Here's a quote from Deepak Chopra. Most people live their entire lives in bondage, a bundle of nerves and conditioned responses which are constantly being triggered by other people and circumstances into totally predictable outcomes. Deepak Chopra. A bundle of conditioned responses. Second arrow is a term used by Buddhists, and it's responsible for probably 95% of the unwanted chatter in our heads. And it comes from our habitual and unconscious reaction to thoughts, feelings, or circumstances that are not in our control. So let's look at a couple of examples. First arrow, you're in a queue and somebody skips in front of you. So this is sacrilege here in the UK. People will kill you for jumping the queue. So this is out with your control. You're standing peacefully in a queue, somebody jumps in front of you. Second arrow, it triggers an angry reaction in you. I can't believe it. Some people are just so rude. The world is going crazy. People just don't have any manners anymore. So second arrow is the unconscious reaction to the first arrow. And, often we carry this kind of thing around with us all day. You get home to your partner hours later and tell them, oh, you won't believe this rude person that jumped in the queue. And sometimes people carry stuff for an entire lifetime. The world just is how it is. And it's our unconscious reaction to it, which causes so much of the unwanted chatter in our head. Whether you're thinking all day about how this politician, did this or did that, and the world should be like this, and it's our unconscious resistance to the world is second arrow. And like we said, in the before, when we were talking about thoughts and thinking, we can consciously choose when we're aware whether to follow these storylines or not, or whether to make peace our priority. Here's another example. This is an internal example. You're feeling sad or anxious or confused. So none of these are in our control. They just happen by themselves. And then you get the mind's commentary. This is bad. I shouldn't be feeling this way. There's something wrong with me. I'll never be happy ever again. I can't live like this anymore. This is second arrow. And this is where the vast majority of our suffering comes from. So it's this autopilot reaction. And we can also, when we become more aware of these things, we can choose a more conscious response. For example, anxiety doesn't feel great, but that's okay. Nothing wrong happening. And since that's what's there anyway in this moment, it's better to flow with it than to resist it and create more suffering. There's another lesson I could have added in the master class is the difference between pain and suffering. As long as we are in these human bodies, pain is inevitable. Anxiety is a painful experience. But what we tend to do through our resistance, through our second arrow reaction, is we turn pain into full-blown suffering. All suffering comes from resistance to what is. And here's the thing as well, most people confuse peace with feeling good. Whereas, I also experience sadness, I also experience anxiety, I experience fear, I experience the whole, smorgasbord, sorry, I got the word wrong, of human emotion. But whether you create suffering or not is an entirely different matter. You can experience sadness, loneliness, fear, worry, And if it's accepted as part of the human condition and not seen as bad or wrong, although you may not eliminate pain entirely, you can eliminate suffering. And that's really the main message I'm trying to put across here. All suffering comes from resistance. So I'm going to do one final strategy here. And it's this one, recognizing that the mind tells more lies than Pinocchio. The mind's take on reality is unreliable, to put it mildly. Most of us have a head riddled with false beliefs and self-critical thoughts, echoes of what we took on board as children. Some of the things I heard as a kid were, you're a bad boy, you're not good enough, you're a disappointment, you'll never amount to anything. And then, for many of us, 20, 30 years later, we're walking around in these adult bodies, but we're still carrying around these programming from 5 years old. It's still very much alive inside us. So we need to be like Inspector Columbo. I don't know if you remember that. Was it the 70s or the 80s? The cop, Inspector Columbo. And we need to question every thought. So this is another strategy for making instant peace with a troubled mind. So if your mind tells you, for example, that you'll never amount to anything, think of all the things you've successfully achieved in your life. Make a list. Like Inspector Columbo, build a compelling case to support the opposite. If the mind tells you you're not worthy of love, write a list of all the people who have ever complimented you, who have ever said you're great. And if you do this, if you look for evidence to support the opposite, you'll quickly discover that most of your long-held beliefs will crumble with just a little scrutiny. So take everything the mind tells you with a large pinch of salt. And here are 3 great questions to ask yourself whenever a belief or an assumption pops into your head. I've taken this from Byron Katie, The Work, which is a work that I've really loved for many years. So the first question, do I know for 100% certain that it's true? You'll find that pretty much always, if you ask this question, the answer will always be no. No, I don't know for 100% certain that this is true. And then these 2 other thoughts you could ask, how do I feel when I believe this thought and when I don't? So before you assume that the twinge in your chest is an impending medical emergency, or imagine you're going to get fired, lose your house, and end up sleeping in the gutter, just because your boss looked at you in a strange way, consider this. You have absolutely no idea what may or may not happen in future. I think it was Mark Twain who said that, I spent my whole life worrying about things that never happened. So a lot of these worries can be nipped in the bud by asking this question, do I know for 100% certain that this is true? So there you go. 6 simple ways to instantly make peace with a troubled mind. including the noticing exercise. It's 6. Peace of mind versus peace with mind. Recognizing the difference between thoughts and thinking. Learning how to shut up shop. Pull down the shutter, put the closed sign up. I'm not open for business. Second arrow, how 95% of our suffering comes from the unconscious resistance to the content of the mind. And the final one, questioning your beliefs and false assumptions. So that's it. I hope you found that helpful. And thank you for listening. If you have any questions or would like some personal support on your journey to a more vibrant, aware, and peaceful life, feel free to email me anytime at richard@thinklessandgrowrich.com. Bye. See you later.